The heat inside 5 Point Station pressed against Sarah Collins like a living thing. August in Atlanta meant the underground MARTA hub became a sweltering maze where the air conditioning fought a losing battle against 300,000 daily commuters and the relentless Georgia sun baking the concrete above. Sweat gathered at the small of her back beneath her navy uniform as she walked the central platform, her boots marking a steady rhythm against the terrazzo floor. Beside her, Max moved with the fluid economy of motion that 7 years of partnership had made second nature. The Belgian Malinois kept his nose low, sampling the complex tapestry of scents that accumulated in any major transit hub. Coffee, perfume, fast food, the metallic tang of the rails, the chemical bite of cleaning solution, human sweat in 1,000 variations. His black harness sat snug against his tan and black coat, the Atlanta PD K-9 unit patch catching fluorescent light as he worked. The station hummed with the particular energy of a Tuesday afternoon. The lunch rush had subsided, but the evening exodus had not yet begun, leaving that strange interstitial period when the platforms held a mix of tourists consulting maps, service workers heading to late shifts, and the perpetual flow of people who kept any major city alive. Voices echoed off the vaulted ceiling, announcements crackled through speakers warning passengers to mind the gap, and somewhere in the distance a busker played saxophone with more enthusiasm than skill. Sarah checked her watch. 14:23. They had been at it for almost 2 hours, working a grid pattern through the station, after dispatch relayed an anonymous tip about suspicious activity. The caller had been vague, mentioning only packages and the transit system. The kind of tip that could mean everything or nothing. Most turned out to be abandoned luggage or homeless individuals storing their belongings. But you checked anyway. You always checked. Max paused at a concrete pillar near the eastbound platform, his ears rotating like satellite dishes. Sarah watched him process whatever information his nose was delivering. That remarkable organ capable of detecting scents at concentrations nearly 100,000 times lower than human perception. After a moment, he moved on, dismissing whatever had caught his attention. They climbed the stairs to the mezzanine level, where the central escalators connected the platforms below to the street exits above. This was the heart of 5 Points, the convergence point of all 4 MARTA rail lines, the busiest station in the entire system. From here, passengers could transfer between lines, exit to the surface, or access the warren of underground passages that connected to nearby buildings. The escalators ran in their eternal loops, 3 wide moving staircases carrying passengers up while 2 brought them down. The center escalator, the widest of the 5, handled the heaviest traffic. Sarah positioned herself near a support column where she could observe the flow while staying out of the way. Max sat beside her, alert but calm, his tongue lolling slightly in the heat. A transit officer she recognized nodded as he passed. Jenkins, she thought, or maybe Jensen, one of the MARTA police who handled the day-to-day security while Atlanta PD supported on specific operations. He looked as overheated as she felt, his forehead gleaming under the lights. Sarah keyed her radio. "Precinct, this is Collins. Continuing sweep of 5 Point Station. Nothing to report so far. Over." The response crackled back. "Copy that, Collins. Let us know if anything develops. Anti-bomb is on standby if needed." She clipped the radio back to her belt and resumed watching the crowd. An older man in a rumpled suit struggled with a rolling suitcase. A woman in scrubs walked with the purposeful stride of someone running late for a shift. 2 men in construction vests carried hard hats and lunch coolers, the ordinary parade of urban life. Max stood. Sarah noticed immediately. His body language shifted from relaxed vigilance to something sharper. His ears came forward. His tail, which had been hanging loose, now extended straight behind him. He took 2 steps toward the escalators and stopped, his entire being focused on something invisible to her. She had learned long ago to trust that focus. Max did not alert casually. His training was too thorough, his instincts too finely honed. When he locked onto something, there was always a reason. "What is it, boy?" Max did not look at her. His attention remained fixed on the base of the center escalator, where the metal stairs emerged from the floor in their endless procession. A maintenance panel sat flush with the floor there, a rectangular cover that allowed access to the machinery below. Sarah had walked past it a dozen times without noticing. Now Max was moving toward it, his gait shifting into the careful, deliberate approach he used when working ascent. Sarah followed, her hand moving unconsciously to rest on her service weapon. Around them, passengers continued their oblivious flow, stepping onto and off the escalators, checking phones, having conversations, living their ordinary Tuesday afternoons. Max reached the escalator and did something he had never done in 7 years of partnership. He stopped at the top of the moving stairs and refused to move. A woman ascending the escalator nearly collided with him, jerking back with a startled curse. Max did not flinch. He planted himself across the top of the escalator like a furry barricade, forcing the woman to squeeze past on the narrow stationary edge. She shot Sarah an irritated look. "Your dog is blocking the escalator." Sarah barely heard her. She was watching Max, watching the way his muscles had gone rigid, the way his nostrils flared with each breath, the way his eyes remained locked on the maintenance panel at the base of the stairs. "Max, higher." The command for him to come to her. He ignored it. In 7 years, he had never ignored a direct command. Sarah felt the first cold trickle of real fear slide down her spine, distinct from the sweat already gathered there. Max knew something. Max sensed something. And whatever it was bad enough that he had overridden his training to warn her. She moved to the top of the escalator and crouched beside him, following his gaze down the moving stairs to the maintenance panel below. From this angle, she could see what she had missed before. The panel sat slightly askew, one corner lifted perhaps half an inch above flush. Such a small detail, such an easy thing to overlook in the chaos of a busy transit station. But Max had not overlooked it. She leaned closer to him, her nose almost touching his ear. "What do you smell, Max?" "What is it?" he whined, a soft sound of distress that she had rarely heard from him. His body trembled with the effort of holding position against every instinct telling him to move, to flee, to get away from whatever threat his nose had identified. Sarah straightened and keyed her radio, keeping her voice level despite the adrenaline now flooding her system. "Precinct, this is Collins. I need immediate assistance at 5 Point Station, Central Escalator. K-9 has alerted on a possible device, requesting bomb squad and evacuation support." "How copy?" The response came faster than she expected. "Copy, Collins. Bomb squad is rolling. ETA 12 minutes. Initiate evacuation procedures. All units be advised. Possible explosive device at 5 Points MARTA station. 12 minutes. An eternity or an instant, depending on what was hidden beneath that panel." Sarah grabbed the arm of the transit officer she had seen earlier, the one she thought was Jenkins or Jensen. He had stopped nearby, drawn by the sight of Max blocking the escalator. "I need this station evacuated. Now. Central escalator first, then work outward. Keep people calm, but keep them moving. Get them to the street exits." His eyes went wide. "What is it?" "Possible device. My dog is alerting. Do not let anyone near that maintenance panel at the bottom of this escalator. Understood?" He nodded, his face pale beneath his dark skin, and reached for his own radio. Sarah turned back to the escalator, where more passengers were now bunching up behind Max, their irritation growing vocal. "Lady, get your dog out of the way. Some of us have places to be. What the hell is wrong with this animal?" Sarah held up her badge. "Atlanta Police. I need everyone to step back and move toward the exits. This escalator is closed." That got their attention. The word police carried weight, especially when delivered in the flat, authoritative tone Sarah had perfected over her years on the force. The passengers at the top of the escalator began to disperse, grumbling but compliant. But more kept arriving from below, riding the moving stairs up toward Max's immovable form. She needed to stop that escalator. Sarah scanned the nearby columns until she spotted what she was looking for: an emergency stop button, housed in a red box. She lunged for it and slammed her palm against the button. The escalator shuddered and groaned to a halt, its sudden stop causing several passengers to stumble. Now the complaints turned to alarm. The cessation of movement on a device that never stopped was inherently wrong, a violation of the unconscious assumptions that govern daily life. People looked around, seeking explanation, seeking authority, seeking someone to tell them what was happening. Sarah climbed onto the stopped escalator, making her way down the frozen stairs toward the maintenance panel. Max followed her, his claws clicking against the metal treads. Halfway down, she caught it. A smell. Faint, almost lost beneath the station's usual cocktail of odors. Chemical, acrid, wrong. She stopped 10 feet from the panel and crouched, studying it with new eyes. The slight gap at one corner. A thin wire, barely visible, running from beneath the panel to somewhere inside the escalator machinery. The wire was not part of the original construction. She knew that with cold certainty. Sarah backed up slowly, pulling Max with her. They retreated up the frozen escalator, and she grabbed her radio again. Precinct, Collins. Confirming visual on potential device. I have a wire running from the maintenance panel into the escalator mechanism. Panel appears to have been tampered with. I need that bomb squad here yesterday, and I need this station empty 5 minutes ago. Copy, Collins. All units converging on 5 points. Bomb squad is pushing hard. 9 minutes out. 9 minutes. She looked around the mezzanine level at the hundreds of people still milling about, still riding other escalators, still oblivious to the danger lurking beneath their feet. 9 minutes was too long. She spotted the transit officer coordinating with 2 others near the north exit. Beyond them, she could see the first confused waves of passengers being directed toward the stairs. But it was not fast enough. Not nearly fast enough. Max pressed against her leg, and she felt his trembling. He knew. On some level beyond human comprehension, he understood what was hidden beneath that panel. His training had prepared him to find such things, but nothing could prepare any creature, human or K-9, for the reality of standing so close to potential death. Sarah made a decision. She climbed onto a concrete bench near the escalators, raising herself above the crowd. Then she did something police officers were trained never to do. She shouted, "Everyone listen to me. I am Lieutenant Sarah Collins, Atlanta Police Department. There is a credible threat in this station. Everyone needs to evacuate immediately. Do not run. Walk quickly toward the nearest exit. Leave your belongings if necessary. Move, now." For a moment nothing happened. The crowd stared at her, processing her words, weighing them against the inconvenience of compliance. Then Max barked. It was not his normal bark. It was the sharp, urgent sound he made only in the presence of genuine danger. A warning bark. A "this is real" bark. The crowd moved, not quite a panic, but close. People abandoned their places, their conversations, their carefully maintained personal bubbles. They flowed toward the exits in a ragged tide, some walking fast, some nearly jogging despite Sarah's instructions. The mezzanine level began to empty, but the platforms below were still full, trains still running, passengers still boarding and disembarking. Oblivious to the drama playing out above them, Sarah jumped down from the bench and ran toward the stairs leading to the southbound platform. She nearly collided with Jenkins or Jensen, who was directing people with increasingly frantic gestures. "The platforms," she told him. "We need to stop the trains, clear the platforms. MARTA, control is shutting down the lines," he said. But there are trains already in the station, 2 on the lower level. Get them out. Tell the drivers to continue to the next station without stopping. Clear everyone off the platforms." She did not wait for his response. She was already descending, Max at her heels, plunging into the tide of confused passengers, trying to figure out why their normal Tuesday had suddenly become something else. The southbound platform was chaos. A train sat at the station, its doors open, passengers half on and half off in the confusion. The driver's voice crackled over the intercom, something about a temporary delay. "Please be patient." Sarah pushed through the crowd, holding her badge high. "Police, everyone off the train. Move to the exits. This is not a drill." The authority in her voice cut through the noise. People began backing away from the train, moving toward the stairs and escalators that led up to the mezzanine. The train driver, a heavy-set man with graying hair, leaned out of his cab. "What is going on? Possible explosive device upstairs. You need to close your doors and move this train to the next station. Do not stop until you reach Garnett." His face went grey, but he nodded. The doors began to close, forcing the remaining passengers to step back. A moment later, the train lurched into motion, gathering speed as it disappeared into the tunnel. One down. Sarah turned and sprinted for the northbound platform, Max keeping pace beside her. Her lungs burned from the heat and the exertion, but she did not slow. Time was the enemy now. Every second counted. The northbound platform was already clearer, the evacuation filtering down from above. Another train sat at the station, but this one was already empty, its doors closed, its driver visible in the cab ahead. "Move this train!" Sarah shouted, slapping the window of the cab. "Get it out of here!" The driver, a young woman with braids, gave her a thumbs up and reached for her controls. The train began to move, sliding into the darkness of the tunnel. Sarah allowed herself one breath of relief. The platforms were emptying, the trains were gone. The immediate danger of mass casualties was diminishing with every passenger who reached the street above. Her radio crackled. "Collins, bomb squad is 2 minutes out. What is your status?" "Platforms are clearing. I am heading back up to secure the device location. Negative, Collins. Fall back to a safe perimeter. Let bomb squad handle it. Copy that." Falling back. But she was already moving toward the stairs, toward the mezzanine, toward the frozen escalator where it had all begun. She needed to see. She needed to know. It was the same compulsion that had driven her to become a cop in the first place, that inability to turn away from danger when others needed protection. Max pressed close to her side as they climbed. His trembling had not stopped, but he showed no hesitation. Where she went, he went. It was the only truth that mattered in their partnership. The mezzanine level was nearly empty now, just a few stragglers being herded toward exits by transit officers. The frozen escalator sat in the center of the space like a monument to interrupted routine, its stairs leading down to the maintenance panel and whatever lay beneath. Sarah positioned herself behind a concrete pillar with a clear sightline to the escalator. It was not much cover, but it was something. She pulled Max down beside her and wrapped her arm around his shoulders. "Good boy, you did good." He licked her hand, a quick gesture of connection in the midst of crisis. The bomb squad arrived with the controlled urgency of professionals who dealt with death every day. They came in full protective gear, their suits making them look like astronauts exploring a hostile world. The team leader, a compact woman whose name tape read Martinez, approached Sarah's position. "Lieutenant Collins, what do we have?" Sarah relayed everything: the anonymous tip, Max's alert, the tampered maintenance panel, the wire, the chemical smell. Martinez listened without interruption, her eyes scanning the scene as Sarah spoke. "Any idea what kind of device?" "My K-9 is trained on standard military and commercial explosives. Whatever he smelled triggered a strong positive alert. Beyond that, I cannot say." Martinez nodded. "Good work getting the evacuation started. We will take it from here." I need you at the perimeter. Understood. Sarah retreated toward the north exit, Max beside her. Behind them, she could hear the bomb squad beginning their approach to the escalator, their movements deliberate and precise. They would use robots first, cameras, remote tools, anything to assess the threat without putting human bodies in the kill zone. She reached the exit and stepped into the blinding afternoon sunlight. After the artificial twilight of the station, the Georgia sun felt like a physical blow. She squinted, letting her eyes adjust, and found herself in the middle of organized chaos. Police cruisers blocked the intersections around the station entrances. Yellow tape stretched between barriers, creating a perimeter that pushed back against the growing crowd of displaced passengers and curious onlookers. Fire trucks idled nearby, their crews standing ready. Ambulances waited with doors open. The full machinery of emergency response had spun into motion. Sarah spotted Sergeant Davis near one of the cruisers, his bulk unmistakable even in the crowd. He was her direct supervisor, a 20-year veteran who had seen everything the city could throw at him. He raised a hand when he saw her approaching. "Collins, hell of a day. Tell me about it." His eyes dropped to Max, who was panting heavily in the heat. "That dog of yours just saved a lot of lives. Whatever is down there, your evacuation bought us time." Sarah accepted a bottle of water from a nearby officer and poured half of it into her cupped hand for Max to drink. He lapped eagerly, his tongue scooping the water with desperate efficiency. "Any idea who called in the tip?" Davis shook his head. Anonymous, prepaid phone, probably a burner. Voice was male, adult, calm. He knew something was going to happen, but he did not want it to happen. "That is my read, an inside man with a conscience. Maybe. Or maybe someone who got cold feet. We will know more when we know what kind of device we are dealing with." Sarah's radio crackled with Martinez's voice. "All units, be advised. We have visual confirmation of an improvised explosive device beneath the escalator maintenance panel. Appears to be command detonated with a timer backup. Timer shows approximately 4 minutes remaining. We are attempting disarm. 4 minutes. Sarah looked at the station entrance, at the crowd beyond the perimeter, at all the people who had been riding those escalators just minutes ago. 4 minutes from disaster. Max pressed against her leg, and she dropped her hand to rest on his head. His fur was hot from the sun, but his presence was solid and reassuring. He had done his job. He had found the threat. Now all they could do was wait. The next 3 minutes stretched like hours. Sarah stood beside Davis, watching the station entrance, listening to the terse radio traffic from the bomb squad. Martinez's team worked with the calm efficiency of long practice, their voices carrying no hint of the tension that must have gripped them. 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, timer disabled, beginning full disarm. Sarah let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Beside her, Davis made a sound that might have been a prayer or might have been a curse. More minutes passed. The crowd beyond the perimeter grew restless, people checking phones, demanding information, protesting the disruption to their days. They did not understand how close they had come. They did not understand that they were alive because a dog had refused to move. Finally, Martinez's voice came through again. "Device is safe. Repeat, device is safe. We have one IED, approximately 5 pounds of plastic explosive with metal shrapnel casing. Timer was set for 14:33. If this had detonated during rush hour, we would be looking at mass casualties. 14:33. Sarah checked her watch. That was 10 minutes ago. 10 minutes since the timer would have reached 0. 10 minutes since the escalator would have become a kill box, packed with afternoon commuters ascending into oblivion. Max had alerted at 14:25, 8 minutes before detonation. Without his warning, the bomb squad never would have made it in time. The evacuation never would have happened. Hundreds of people would be dead. She knelt beside Max and wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her face into his fur. He tolerated the embrace with patient dignity, his tail giving a single slow wag. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved them all." The scene shifted to investigation mode. Crime scene technicians descended on the station, photographing, sampling, cataloguing. Detectives began interviewing witnesses, looking for anyone who might have seen something suspicious in the hours before the device was discovered. The FBI arrived because terrorism was now on the table, and their presence added another layer of controlled chaos to an already complicated scene. Sarah gave her statement 3 times, once to Davis, once to a detective she did not recognize, and once to a federal agent whose name she immediately forgot. Each time, she walked through the sequence of events. The anonymous tip, the routine sweep, Max's sudden alertness, his refusal to move from the escalator, her discovery of the tampered panel, the evacuation, everything that had happened in those frantic minutes. Through it all, Max stayed beside her. He drank more water, accepted treats from admiring officers, and gradually stopped trembling as the immediate danger faded. But Sarah noticed that he kept glancing toward the station entrance, his ears still tracking sounds from within. On some level, he knew the threat was not truly over. Davis found her as the afternoon faded toward evening. "Collins, Captain wants to see you." She followed him to a command vehicle parked a block from the station, an RV-sized truck bristling with antennas and satellite dishes. Inside, it was blissfully air-conditioned, packed with monitors and communication equipment. Captain Reeves stood at the center of the chaos, a tall woman with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had earned every inch of her authority. "Lieutenant Collins." "Max." She nodded to both of them with equal respect. "Outstanding work today. The bomb squad estimates that device would have killed at least 50 people and injured hundreds more. You prevented that." "Max found it," Sarah said. "I just followed his lead." Reeves smiled slightly. "Good handlers always say that. But I have seen the footage from the station cameras. You made the right calls in a pressure situation. That matters." She turned to one of the monitors, which showed a frozen image from the station's security system. A figure in dark clothing, face obscured by a baseball cap, crouching near the escalator maintenance panel. "This is from 2 days ago. He worked on that panel for about 10 minutes, then walked away. We are running facial recognition, but he knew where the cameras were, never gave us a clean angle on his face." Sarah studied the image. The figure's posture, the way he held himself as he worked, suggested familiarity with the task. Not a nervous amateur, someone who had done this before, or at least practiced extensively. "He knows the station," she said. "That is what we think. Possibly a former employee or contractor. Someone with knowledge of the maintenance systems." The anonymous tip, Sarah said. Male, calm, knew something was going to happen. Maybe the same person? Reeves exchanged a glance with Davis. "That is one theory. Another is that he has a partner who got cold feet, or someone else discovered what he was planning and decided to intervene without identifying themselves. Either way, there is more to this story, much more." Reeves touched a button on her console, and the image changed. A map of the MARTA system appeared, 4 colored lines radiating from 5 points like the spokes of a wheel. "This is what keeps me up at night. 5 points is the central hub. If you wanted to hit MARTA, this is where you would do maximum damage. But why a timer? Why not a remote detonation where you can control the exact moment?" "He wanted to be somewhere else when it went off," Sarah said. "Establish an alibi. Or he wanted to be sure it would not be discovered in time. A timer gives you certainty. You set it, you walk away, you know it will happen, unless a dog blocks an escalator." Reeves smiled again, this time with genuine warmth. "Unless that." She reached out and scratched Max behind his ears. He accepted the attention with the dignity of a decorated veteran. "Here is the situation, Lieutenant. We have a bomber who is still out there, possibly planning additional attacks. We have a device that suggests sophistication and planning. We have an anonymous tipster who may or may not be connected to the perpetrator. And we have you and Max, who apparently can smell trouble before it erupts." Sarah straightened slightly. "What do you need from us? Stay on this. You know the station, you know the smell of that device, and Max has proven he can detect it. Bomb squad recovered samples from the device. Tomorrow morning, I want Max working scent training with those samples. If there are more devices out there, I want him able to find them." "Understood. In the meantime, get some rest. Both of you, tomorrow is going to be a long day." Sarah left the command vehicle with Max at her side, stepping back into the evening heat. The sun had dipped below the buildings, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The crowd around the station had thinned, replaced by media trucks and reporters doing stand-ups for the evening news. She walked past them, ignoring the shouted questions and camera flashes. Max drew attention, as he always did, but she kept moving until they reached her unmarked cruiser parked 2 blocks away. Inside the car, with the air conditioning blasting, Sarah allowed herself a moment of stillness. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind the bone-deep exhaustion that followed any crisis. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the steering wheel. Max rested his head on the center console, his brown eyes watching her. She reached out and stroked his muzzle, feeling the softness of his fur, the warmth of his breath. "Long day, huh?" He huffed in agreement. She started the car and pulled away from the curb, heading for home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new demands, but tonight they both needed rest. The apartment was dark and quiet when they arrived, the air stale from being closed up all day. Sarah opened the windows to let in the evening breeze, started Max's dinner, and collapsed on the couch while he ate. Her phone buzzed with messages, concerned friends who had seen the news. Her mother, demanding to know if she was safe. Colleagues offering congratulations and support. She answered a few, ignored most, and let the phone fall silent on the cushion beside her. Max finished his dinner and padded over to join her on the couch. He was too big for it, really, his body taking up more than half the available space, but she shifted to accommodate him, letting his weight press against her side. Sleep came quickly, despite the thoughts churning in her mind. Questions about the bomber, questions about the tipster, questions about what tomorrow would bring. But exhaustion won out over worry, pulling her down into dreamless darkness. The morning came too soon, announced by Max's cold nose pressing against her face. She groaned and pushed him away, but he was persistent, his whines making it clear that breakfast was required immediately. Sarah fed him, showered, dressed, and drank 2 cups of coffee before she felt remotely human. The news was full of yesterday's events, reporters breathlessly recounting the near miss at 5 Point Station. Max's role was mentioned repeatedly, with phrases like hero dog and K-9 lifesaver appearing in almost every segment. She turned off the television and headed for the door. Max was already waiting, his harness in his mouth, ready to work. The K-9 training facility was a converted warehouse on the outskirts of the city, its interior configured for scent work, obedience training, and the various specialized tasks that police dogs performed. Sarah arrived to find Martinez already there, along with several evidence containers holding samples from yesterday's device. "Lieutenant Collins." Martinez extended her hand. "Thanks for coming. Would not miss it." Sarah shook the offered hand. "What do we have?" Martinez led them to a cleared area where several identical containers sat in a row. "These are the samples from the device. Plastic explosive, specifically a variant of C4. Military grade, not easy to obtain on the civilian market." Sarah frowned. Where would someone get military-grade explosives? That is what the FBI is trying to figure out. Could be stolen from a military installation. Could be smuggled from overseas. Could be someone with connections to arms dealers. Too early to say. She gestured to the containers. I want to see if Max can identify the scent signature. If our bomber has more devices planted, they are probably using the same materials. Max's nose might be the best tool we have for finding them. Sarah nodded and unclipped Max's leash. She led him to the row of containers and gave the command to search. He moved along the line with professional focus, sniffing each container in turn. At the third container he sat, his alert posture. Good boy. Sarah rewarded him with praise and a treat, then repeated the exercise twice more. Each time, Max correctly identified the container holding the explosive sample. Martinez watched with professional appreciation. Impressive. Most dogs need multiple sessions to lock onto a new scent. He got it on the first try. He is the best in the unit. Sarah did not bother with false modesty. Now what? We cannot exactly sweep every station in the MARTA system. Actually, that is exactly what we are going to do. Martinez pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a schedule. The FBI is coordinating with MARTA police for a system-wide sweep. Every station, every line. They want Max at the high-priority locations, starting with the other downtown stations. How long? As long as it takes. They are shutting down the entire system overnight for the first phase. We start at midnight. The rest of the day passed in a blur of briefings and preparation. Sarah learned more about the device than she ever wanted to know. Its construction suggested military or paramilitary training. The timer mechanism was sophisticated, designed to be tamper-resistant. The shrapnel casing would have turned the escalator into a metal storm, shredding anyone within 30 feet. She also learned more about the investigation. The FBI had traced the anonymous call to a burner phone purchased at a gas station outside the city. Security footage showed a figure matching the escalator suspect making the purchase, but once again, his face was never clearly visible. The working theory was that the bomber had gotten cold feet. He had built the device, planted it, set the timer, and then lost his nerve. Rather than walk away and let innocent people die, he had called in a tip, giving the authorities just enough time to respond. It did not exonerate him. Building and planting the bomb was still a crime punishable by life in prison. But it suggested a complicated psychology, someone torn between violent ideology and basic human empathy. Or it suggested a trap, a distraction, a way to draw attention to 5 points while the real attack happened elsewhere. Sarah could not shake that possibility as she prepared for the overnight sweep. The bomber had shown sophistication in his construction and planning. Why would he suddenly become sloppy enough to make an anonymous call? Why give authorities a chance to intervene, unless the call was not about saving lives, unless it was about something else entirely? The midnight sweep began at Peachtree Center Station, one stop north of 5 Points, on the north-south line. The station was eerily quiet with the system shut down, its platforms empty of the usual crowds. Sarah walked the concourse with Max, letting him sample the stale air, watching for any change in his behavior. Nothing. They moved on to Civic Center, then North Avenue, working their way up the line. At each station, the same routine: search, clear, move on. Max remained alert but calm, finding nothing that triggered his training. By 3 in the morning, they had covered the northern half of the system. They took a break at the Lindbergh Center Station, where a mobile command post had been established. Sarah ate a sandwich she did not taste and drank coffee that had gone cold. Davis found her sitting on a bench, Max stretched out at her feet. Quiet night so far. Too quiet. Sarah shook her head. This does not feel right. What do you mean? The bomber calls in his own device. Why? If he lost his nerve, why not just call in a general threat? Why be specific about 5 points? You think it was misdirection? I think we should not assume anything. Sarah stood and stretched. This guy is smart. Military training, possibly military explosives. He knows how law enforcement works. He knows we would respond to a credible threat with everything we have. Draw our attention to one station while hitting another. Or draw our attention to the system while hitting something else entirely. Davis looked troubled. That is a dark thought, Collins. I deal in dark thoughts. It is the job. They resumed the sweep, moving to the east-west line. Decatur, Avondale, Indian Creek. Station after station, all quiet, all clear. Max worked tirelessly, his energy seeming limitless despite the late hour. Dawn was breaking when they reached the airport station, the southernmost point of the rail system. The sprawling transit hub served Hartsfield-Jackson, the busiest airport in the world, and its complexity made the search take twice as long as any other station. Max was working the lower concourse when he stopped. Sarah recognized the change instantly. His ears came forward, his tail went rigid. His nose pressed against a ventilation grate set into the wall. "Alert!" she called out. "Max has something." The response was immediate. Officers converged on their position while Martinez and her team moved forward with their equipment. Sarah pulled Max back, keeping him clear of the potential blast radius. Martinez knelt beside the grate and shone a flashlight through the slats. She was quiet for a long moment. "We have a device," she said finally. "Same construction as 5 points. Timer is active." "How long?" She leaned closer, studying the display visible through the grate. Her face went pale. 11 minutes. The evacuation that followed was controlled chaos. The airport station was connected to the domestic terminal, which was already buzzing with early morning travelers. Airport police, TSA, and MARTA officers worked together to move thousands of people away from the transit hub, pushing them toward the international terminal on the other side of the complex. Sarah stayed with Martinez's team, watching them work. The grate was secured with tamper-resistant screws that had to be drilled out. Each second felt like an hour. Each minute felt like a lifetime. Max pressed against her leg, trembling again. He knew. He always knew. With 4 minutes remaining, Martinez had the grate off. She reached inside with gloved hands, working by touch, her voice a steady stream of technical jargon that meant nothing to Sarah. Wire colors, connection points, timer circuits, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. The timer went dark. Martinez let out a breath and sat back on her heels, disarmed. Sarah closed her eyes and let the relief wash through her. When she opened them, Max was looking up at her with something that might have been pride. "Good boy," she whispered. "You did it again." The aftermath was even more intense than the day before. 2 devices in 2 days, both planted in major transit hubs, both discovered and disarmed thanks to Max's nose. The media went into overdrive, and Max became a genuine celebrity. Hero K-9 saves Atlanta. Twice was the headline on every local news site, but Sarah was not celebrating. She was worried. 2 devices suggested planning on a scale that went beyond a single disturbed individual. 2 devices suggested resources, support, maybe an organization. And 2 devices suggested there might be more. She said as much to Captain Reeves during a briefing at headquarters. "We found 2 because Max was in the right place at the right time. What if there are more that we missed? What if this is just the beginning?" Reeves nodded grimly. "FBI is thinking the same thing. They are expanding the investigation, bringing in more resources. Every transit system in the southeast is now on high alert. Do we have any leads on the bomber?" "Some." Reeves pulled up a file on her computer. "We got a partial print from the airport device. It matched a record in a military database." Sarah leaned forward. "Who?" The screen showed a photograph of a man in army dress uniform. Young, clean-cut, unremarkable. The kind of face you would pass on the street without a second glance. "Marcus Webb," Reeves said. "Former Army explosive ordnance disposal, honorable discharge 4 years ago. After that, he drops off the radar. No employment records, no tax filings, no known address. EOD. Sarah felt a chill. He knows bombs. He knows how to build them, plant them, and disarm them. Which explains why these devices were so sophisticated. Why would someone with that training turn to terrorism? That is the question everyone is asking. Reeves shook her head. His military record is clean, no disciplinary issues, no concerning behavior. He deployed twice, came home, finished his enlistment, and disappeared. People do not just disappear. They do if they want to, or if someone helps them. Sarah studied the photograph, memorizing the face. Average height, brown hair, brown eyes, nothing distinctive, nothing that would stand out in a crowd. "I want to find him," she said. "You and everyone else in this building. FBI is running point, but we are providing support. Your job is still the K-9 angle. If there are more devices out there, Max is our best hope of finding them. What about protection? If Webb knows we found his devices, he knows we have a dog who can track his scent. He might see Max as a threat. Already thought of that." Reeves handed her a folder. "Starting tonight, you have a protection detail. 2 officers, rotating shifts. They go where you go." Sarah opened the folder and scanned the names. Officers she knew, both competent and professional. It was a sensible precaution, but it also felt like an escalation, a confirmation that the danger was real and personal. She left headquarters with Max and found her new detail waiting by her car. Rodriguez and Chen, both uniformed, both trying to look casual and failing completely. "Lieutenant," Rodriguez said with a nod. "Let me guess," she said. "Captain's orders." "Yes, ma'am." Sarah sighed. "Fine. But if you're going to follow me around, you might as well make yourselves useful. One of you can pick up coffee." They fell into an uneasy routine over the next several days. Sarah continued to work the investigation, providing support to the FBI's efforts while maintaining her regular duties with the K-9 unit. Max underwent additional scent training, reinforcing his ability to detect the specific explosive signature used in Webb's devices. The protection detail was a constant presence, Rodriguez and Chen trading off shifts with 2 other officers whose names Sarah never quite learned. They drove her to work, escorted her through parking structures, and stood watch outside her apartment at night. It was suffocating. It was necessary. The investigation made slow progress. Tips poured in from the public, most of them useless, a few worth pursuing. Webb's photograph was circulated to law enforcement nationwide, but he remained a ghost. No confirmed sightings, no financial trail, no digital footprint. On the 5th day after the airport discovery, Sarah was reviewing case files at her desk when her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. "Lieutenant Collins." Silence on the other end. Then a man's voice, calm and measured. The same qualities that had been noted in the anonymous tip. "Your dog is impressive." Sarah's blood went cold. She gestured frantically to a nearby colleague, miming that she needed the call traced. "Who is this? You know who this is?" A pause. "I did not want anyone to get hurt. That was never the point." Then what was the point? Sarah kept her voice steady, despite her racing heart. Why build bombs if you did not want them to go off? Because sometimes the only way to make people listen is to show them how vulnerable they are. Another pause. "The transit system is a joke. No real security. No effective screening. Anyone with basic training could do what I did. You're Marcus Webb." A longer pause. "I used to be." "Why are you calling me?" "Because I need you to understand. The devices were meant to be found. I called in 5 points. I made sure the airport device was in a location your dog would search. I wanted you to find them." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "Why?" "Because finding them proves my point. The system is vulnerable. A determined attacker could kill thousands. I showed that, and I showed that the only reason those people are alive is because I chose not to kill them. That is insane." "Is it?" Webb's voice took on an edge. "How many people died on September 11th? How many people die every year because we refuse to take security seriously? I built 2 devices and planted them in the busiest transit system in the southeast. No one noticed. No one stopped me. If I had wanted those bombs to explode, they would have. So this was what? A demonstration, a warning. Webb sighed. But nobody is going to listen. They never do. They will call me a terrorist and hunt me down, and nothing will change. The system will stay broken. The next person who does this might not be so considerate. The trace indicator on Sarah's computer flashed. They had him. She signaled to hold. Why did you call me specifically? Because you listened to your dog. Most handlers would have dismissed the alert, assumed it was a false positive. You trusted him. That matters. He saved a lot of lives. He did. And so did you. Remember that, Lieutenant. When this is over and they're pinning medals on your chest, remember that you made the choice to act. Most people do not. This does not have to end badly, Sarah said. Turn yourself in. Explain your reasoning to a jury. Maybe they will understand. A hollow laugh. You do not believe that any more than I do. I built bombs. I planted them in public places. The intentions do not matter. The reasons do not matter. I will spend the rest of my life in prison, or I will die resisting arrest. Those are the only options. There is always another option. Not for me. Webb's voice softened. Take care of that dog, Lieutenant. He is special. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone for a long moment, then looked up at the room full of officers and agents who had been listening. We got a trace. Burn a phone again, someone said. But we got a cell tower location, east side of the city, near the railroad yards. The railroad yards. Miles of track, dozens of warehouses, countless places to hide. Webb had chosen his location well. Captain Reeves took command, coordinating with the FBI and MARTA police. Teams were dispatched to establish a perimeter around the railroad yards. Helicopters lifted off to provide aerial surveillance. The machinery of law enforcement cranked into motion. Sarah requested permission to join the search. Max knows his scent now. If Webb is in those yards, Max can find him. Reeves hesitated. The protection detail concerns still apply. If Webb sees you as a threat, he might target you. He had a chance to threaten me on the phone. He did not. Sarah shook her head. I do not think he wants to hurt anyone. I think he wants to be caught. That is a dangerous assumption. Maybe. But Max and I are the best chance we have of finding him before this turns into a standoff. Let us do our job. Reeves studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Fine, but you stay behind the tactical teams. You do not approach until the scene is secured. The railroad yards were a maze of rusted tracks and crumbling warehouses, remnants of Atlanta's industrial past. Sarah arrived with Max as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the neglected landscape. The tactical teams were already in position, moving through the yards in careful formation. Sarah waited at the command post, Max alert at her side, watching the operation unfold on monitors fed by body cameras and drones. An hour passed, then 2. The teams cleared warehouse after warehouse, finding nothing but rats and discarded equipment. The light faded. Spotlights came on, turning the yards into a stark landscape of light and shadow. Sarah's radio crackled. Collins, we could use your dog in Sector 7. The teams are spread thin, and we have a lot of ground to cover. She looked at Rodriguez, who had stayed with her despite the operational chaos. You ready? He nodded grimly. Let us go. Sector 7 was the farthest corner of the yards, a collection of storage buildings that had not been used in decades. Sarah moved through the shadows with Max at her side, Rodriguez covering their 6. The dog's nose worked constantly, sampling the air, searching for the scent signature he had learned in training. They had cleared 2 buildings when Max stopped. His head came up, his ears swiveled. He turned toward a 3rd building, a long, low structure with broken windows and a sagging roof. Alert, Sarah whispered into her radio. Max has something. Building 3 in Sector 7. Copy that, came the response. Tactical is 10 minutes out. Hold position. But Max was already moving, pulling against his leash, drawn toward the building with an intensity Sarah had rarely seen. She knew she should wait. She knew protocol demanded patience. She also knew that Webb had called her specifically, had praised her for trusting her dog, had seemed almost to want this moment to happen. Rodriguez, cover the entrance. I am going in. Lieutenant, that is against orders. I know. She unclipped Max's leash. But he knows I am here. He called me for a reason. She pushed open the door of the building and stepped inside. The interior was cavernous and dark, filled with the ghosts of machinery long removed. Sarah moved slowly, letting her eyes adjust, letting Max guide her through the shadows. The dog led her deeper into the building, past pillars and debris, toward a faint light at the far end. She found Webb sitting on an overturned crate, a single battery-powered lantern illuminating his face. He looked older than his photograph, worn down by years of hiding and planning. His hands were empty, resting on his knees. Lieutenant Collins. He smiled slightly. I knew you would come. Your bombs gave me no choice. They gave you every choice. You chose to trust your dog. You chose to evacuate those stations. You chose to come here alone. Webb shook his head. Most people go through life never making real choices. They just follow the path of least resistance. You are different. You are under arrest. Sarah kept her hand near her weapon. Do not make this harder than it has to be. I know. Webb stood slowly, keeping his hands visible. I am not going to resist. I said everything I needed to say on the phone. Then why run? Why hide here? Because I needed to finish something first. He gestured toward the corner of the building. There is a bag over there. It contains evidence, names, locations, communications. Everything the FBI needs to understand what I was trying to do. Sarah glanced at the corner. A backpack sat against the wall, unremarkable and unthreatening. Why would you give us evidence against yourself? Because the point was never about me. Webb's voice was tired. The point was about the system, the vulnerabilities, the failures. If I just built bombs and got caught, I would be another crazy person with a grievance. But if I leave behind proof of how broken things are, maybe someone will actually fix them. Max had moved to Webb's side, sniffing him curiously. The bomber looked down at the dog with something like wonder. He really is remarkable. I watched him at 5 points, you know, on the security footage, the way he blocked that escalator, the way he refused to move. He knew. Animals always know. He's the best partner I've ever had. Take care of him. Webb met her eyes. And take care of yourself, Lieutenant. The world needs people who trust their instincts. Tactical teams flooded the building moments later, surrounding Webb with weapons drawn. He submitted to arrest without resistance, his hands behind his back, his expression peaceful. Sarah watched them lead him away, then walked to the corner and collected the backpack. It was heavy with documents and drives, the evidence Webb had promised. She handed it to an FBI agent and stepped outside into the night air. Max pressed against her leg, and she dropped her hand to his head. The night was warm and quiet, the chaos of the operation settling into routine. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle sounded, lonely and mournful. It was over. But Sarah knew, as she stood in the darkness with her partner beside her, that it was never really over. There would always be another threat, another danger, another moment when everything depended on trust and instinct and the bond between a handler and her dog. She looked down at Max, at his steady eyes and alert ears, at the creature who had saved so many lives through nothing more than his training and his nature. Come on, boy, let us go home. They walked together through the railroad yards, past the officers and agents and vehicles, toward the city lights glowing on the horizon. Behind them, the evidence of Webb's strange crusade was being catalogued and processed. Ahead of them, the uncertain future waited. But in that moment, walking through the darkness with Max at her side, Sarah felt something close to peace. They had done their job. They had followed their instincts. They had saved lives. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Tomorrow would bring new questions about Webb's motivations and the vulnerabilities he had exposed. Tomorrow, the world would continue its complicated dance of danger and response. But tonight, they had won. And that was enough. The apartment was quiet when they arrived home, the protective detail taking up their positions outside while Sarah and Max settled into their routine. Food for him, a shower for her. Then the couch where they had spent so many evenings recovering from the demands of the job. The news was full of the arrest, reporters speculating about Webb's motivations and the investigation to come. Sarah watched for a few minutes, then turned it off. She did not need the media's interpretation. She had been there. She had heard Webb's voice, seen his face, understood something of what drove him. He was wrong, of course. Building bombs was never the answer, no matter how valid the underlying concerns. But she could not quite bring herself to hate him. He had called in his own devices. He had given them time to respond. He had surrendered without violence. In the twisted logic of terrorism, that counted for something. Max shifted beside her, his head coming to rest on her thigh. She stroked his ears absently, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing. "You did good," she told him. "You did so good." His tail thumped once against the cushion. Sleep came slowly that night, her mind still processing everything that had happened, but when it finally arrived, it was deep and dreamless, the sleep of exhaustion and relief. Morning brought a new reality. The case was far from closed. Webb was in federal custody, facing charges that could put him away for life. The evidence in his backpack was being analyzed, revealing a network of contacts and communications that suggested he had not acted entirely alone. Sarah was called to testify before a grand jury, walking through her actions and observations for yet another audience. Max was examined by veterinary specialists, confirming what Sarah already knew. He was healthy, well-trained, and possessed an exceptional nose even by the high standards of police K-9s. The media attention was intense and exhausting. Requests for interviews poured in from local and national outlets. Max appeared on the cover of several magazines, his dignified face staring out from newsstands across the city. Through it all, Sarah tried to maintain some sense of normalcy. She continued her regular duties with the K-9 unit, working cases that had nothing to do with bombs or terrorism. She trained with Max, reinforcing his skills, maintaining his edge. But she could not shake the feeling that something had changed. The world felt different now, more dangerous and more fragile. She had seen how close disaster could come, how easily the ordinary rhythms of life could be shattered. One evening, about a month after Webb's arrest, she sat on her balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the night sky. Max dozed at her feet, his body relaxed, but his ears still tracking sounds from the street below. Her phone buzzed with a message from Captain Reeves. "Commendation ceremony next week. You and Max are being honored by the mayor." Sarah typed a brief acknowledgement and set the phone aside. Awards and ceremonies felt hollow compared to the reality of what they had done. Pieces of metal and paper could not capture the terror of those moments at 5 Points, the relief when the timer went dark, the strange intimacy of her conversation with Webb. What mattered was not the recognition. What mattered was the work. She reached down and scratched Max behind his ears. He opened one eye, regarded her with sleepy contentment, and closed it again. That was the partnership. That was the trust. Through danger and uncertainty, through the darkest moments and the brightest victories, they had each other. That was what mattered. That was what would carry them through whatever came next. The city hummed beneath them, millions of lives intersecting and separating, most of them never knowing how close they had come to tragedy. Somewhere out there, trains ran through underground stations. Escalators carried passengers up and down. The machinery of daily life continued its endless cycle. And somewhere out there, perhaps, another threat was forming. Another danger was taking shape. Another moment was approaching when everything would depend on instinct, training, and the unbreakable bond between a handler and her dog. Sarah closed her eyes and let the night sounds wash over her. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Tonight she would rest. Tonight they had earned that much. The ceremony took place on a bright Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 month after Max had first blocked the escalator at 5 Points. City Hall was packed with dignitaries, media, and members of the Atlanta PD who had come to see their colleagues honored. Sarah stood at attention in her dress uniform, Max sitting perfectly still beside her. The mayor spoke about courage and service, about the thin line between safety and disaster, about the remarkable partnership between human officers and their K-9 companions. When the medal was pinned to Max's harness, he accepted it with the same dignity he brought to everything. No excitement, no fidgeting, just calm professionalism. Sarah received her own commendation with a brief handshake and a few words of praise. Afterward, there was a reception with finger foods and speeches and too many people wanting to shake her hand. Sarah endured it for as long as she could, then slipped away to a quiet corner where she could breathe. Davis found her there, 2 glasses of punch in his hands. Quite the show. Not my favorite part of the job. He handed her a glass. The job is not the ceremonies. The job is what you do when no one is watching. Sarah sipped the punch, too sweet and too cold. Did you read the final report on Webb? Parts of it. Complicated guy. He was trying to prove a point. About vulnerabilities, about security failures. Did he succeed? Davis shrugged. Some changes are being made. Better screening at major stations. More K-9 sweeps. Whether it lasts, who knows? People have short memories. Sarah looked across the room at Max, who was being photographed with a group of admiring officers. He tolerated the attention with characteristic patience. He does not care about any of this. Neither do you, Davis observed. That is why you are good at what you do. She finished her punch and set the glass on a nearby table. I should get back. Max has had enough attention for 1 day. Go, take the rest of the day off. You have earned it. Sarah collected Max and made her escape, nodding politely to the well-wishers who tried to intercept her. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm and welcoming, a reminder that summer was not quite ready to release its grip on the city. She drove home with the windows down, letting the wind flow through the car. Max stuck his head out the passenger window, his ears flapping, his tongue lolling, finally relaxed after the formality of the ceremony. At the apartment, she changed out of her dress uniform and into comfortable clothes. Max shed his ceremonial harness for his everyday collar. They walked to the small park down the street where he could run and sniff and be an ordinary dog for a little while. Watching him bound across the grass, Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. The tension of the past month, the weight of what they had experienced, began to lift. They had done their job. They had made a difference. And now they could rest. A young man walking a Labrador stopped to chat, admiring Max's form and asking about his breed. Sarah answered the questions on autopilot, her mind elsewhere. Somewhere in the city, someone was planning something. Somewhere, danger was taking shape. It was the nature of police work, the endless cycle of threat and response. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today they were just a woman and her dog, enjoying a warm afternoon in a quiet park. Max returned from his explorations, dropping a stick at her feet with an expectant look. She picked it up and threw it, watching him sprint after it with the pure joy that only dogs could express. "Good boy," she called as he brought it back. "Good boy." His tail wagged in agreement. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Sarah sat on a bench and watched the colors change. Max stretched out at her feet. This was the life they had chosen. the danger, the uncertainty. The moments of terror balanced against moments of peace. She would not trade it for anything. When the light finally faded and the park emptied, they walked home together through the cooling evening. The city sounds rose around them, the honk of horns, the rumble of trains, the endless hum of millions of lives in motion. Sarah looked down at Max, at his steady gait and alert eyes. Ready for whatever comes next? He looked up at her, his expression as readable as any human partner's. Always.